Hello and welcome back to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Mark Etheridge, who is on location, as they say in the
Yeah.
business, coming to us live from a hotel room in Oxford, Mississippi, as
Yeah.
part of his early season travels. Mark has been traveling the Southeast to games over the last few days. We will certainly talk about that. I took in an SEC game on Friday. We'll talk about that. Quick before we get to anything else, a quick thank you to our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors for sponsoring this and every episode of Highway to Hoover, especially the season preview episodes that Mark and I grinded our way through. And by the way, those are still probably after one weekend, still probably quite useful. Go check those out if you have not done so already. If you're just joining the show as the season got started, we put out one episode for each SEC team. Those are in the feed, so go check those out. If you have not listened to them already, please do so.
Yeah.
Um,
Got good feedback on those, by the way. So, if you know, especially if you haven't heard the one on your specific team,
yeah.
definitely go check it out.
Yeah. Good crash courses. Most of them are between 15 and 20 minutes, so you can knock them out pretty quick. They're not a big time investment. So you can do so relatively quickly and get through all of them if you wanted to in a relatively short amount of time. So that's the goal with those anyway. So yeah, go check those out. I'm glad you brought up the feedback we've gotten, Mark, because I've heard the same. Like, and you and I are not very good at patting ourselves in the back on this show and
Yeah.
promoting things, but have gotten a lot of good feedback on that series. So I would urge you to go check that out if you've not done so already. Mark, how are we feeling after the opening weekend of games? Are you feeling back to are you acclimating okay to the rhythms of the season? I feel like that takes a little bit of
Yeah,
time to adjust.
exactly, man. I mean, the other part of with my travels is the weather and checking the weather app and are they playing today, or do I need to change and tilt, and what about hotel rooms and all those sorts of kind of logistical things you don't really think about. You're just thinking about going to the games, and when you're deciding where you're going to go. And luckily for me, it worked out. I got to see 4 games in 3 days, and I've got two more in the next 2 days. So I'm going to LSU tonight and going to Auburn Tuesday. So uh that part's been great. I think, I haven't seen a lot of great finishes. The Mississippi State Hofstra game that I saw was close, and we can get into that in a minute. But I think, just overall, uh, looking at it, it's the interesting part for me is we've had all this data and all these um, lineups and things, heading into the season projections. But then when you actually finally get them, right, and you see how teams are going to line up, what the rotations are looking like, there were some surprises for me. But based on everything that we had heard and been provided, so that part is always interesting, when the hot stove talk turns into real. And
Yeah.
so I think, and there were some freshmen in opening day lineups, which freshmen are still around. I know the portal has negated their relevance to some extent, but the ones that SEC teams are signing, they expect to play, and I think that was something that was evident this weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's something about getting those lineup sheets in the first weekend or so that
Mhm.
is just really exciting. And it's funny how quickly, we spend, this is what you're alluding to. We spend all off season, twisting ourselves in knots trying to figure out the lineups and the rotations and the
Right.
bullpen mixes. And then after one weekend, we just find out we were either pretty close,
Yeah,
like,
in some cases, yeah.
or we find out that we were just not close at all. And,
Right.
that either we were getting, we guessed wrong, or we got bad information, or whatever,
Or
like
it
whatever the reason,
changes,
or it
right? I
just
mean,
changes.
guys,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, some guys surge, other guys underperform. You have injuries, you have all these different factors that no one can predict, and that's part of the fun, right? I mean, you're
Hmm.
trying to be as right as you can with the information you have, knowing that it's really a fool's errand.
Right. 100%. Speaking of a fool's errand, a team that we did not have ranked in the preseason, and that we had 14th in the SEC pecking order,
Mhm.
jumped out and had the best weekend of anybody in college baseball. And of course, that is the Oklahoma Sooners. We're going to lead off this episode talking about them. 3-0 weekend at the tournament at Globe Life Field. That was wins over Texas Tech, uh,
Oklahoma State
Oklahoma
and
State,
TCU.
thank you, and TCU. My mind just went totally blank there. Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Three, what remains to be seen. This is true of all games. That remains to be seen how good Texas Tech and Oklahoma State are. But still, those are quality wins regardless. And then of course the win over TCU, extremely impressive, because
Yeah.
what we saw from TCU over the weekend suggests that team is legit. That team's a Big 12 title contender as we projected going into the season. But Oklahoma handled all three of them. I mean, there was not
They were dominant. They
yeah.
didn't just win. I mean, they really took the fight. And
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of
so
games where it was relatively close into the middle innings,
Mhm.
but then it was like after the middle innings, Oklahoma's gotten a speedboat and took off.
Yeah.
Like it was just they'd run away with it, and so they end up with 3 blowout wins. And my headline, and then I'll toss to you. My headline is just the starting pitching
Yeah.
performances. Cameron Johnson, L.J. Mercurius, Cord Rager, 3 really good starts. And I said this last night when Aaron and I recorded a podcast, the D1 baseball podcast last night,
Mhm.
that if this is what we're gonna get from now, it probably won't be this good every week because that's the way this goes. But if this is anything close to what we're gonna get from an Oklahoma rotation, like we need to adjust their ceiling
Oh, yeah.
way higher than what we had it, because that obviously, if they get that kind of starting pitching, that's going to be a hard team to beat. Like it
Yeah.
suddenly they look like a contender in a way that we didn't give them credit for before.
Yeah, I think a couple things, and you alluded to it, but when it's not just that they won, it's not just that they were dominant, it's that the competition level they were facing. Because there were some other teams that had good weekends, but they weren't facing they weren't facing the talent level that that Oklahoma did. And I think the other part for me is, yeah, we had questions about the rebuilt rotation, and certainly they answered it, beware of the September Heisman, right? But it's just opening weekend. But they really really made a great impression opening weekend. But the other part that really struck me is that uh, the lineup with all the different options. It was a lengthy lineup. They hit all the way through. They're versatile. There's speed. There's contact guys. They hit for power. Uh, it looked like a formidable group. And granted, again, it's a small sample size. You got to keep doing it. And Oklahoma has a really challenging schedule, but they don't look like the 14th best team in the conference. Somebody's going to slide. I have no idea who that's going to be, and we won't for a while. But man, they certainly look like a team that's going to be in the host mix, right? And be an Omaha contender based on 3 games.
Yeah, you mentioned the lineup, and I really liked what I saw from this lineup. It remains to be seen if there's going to be a centerpiece to it, right?
Hmm.
Kind of like an Easton Carmichael type guy.
Yeah.
There might be. I'm not saying there's not. There might be one that emerges, but even if there's not, it felt like one of those lineups this weekend where you could put 9 names in a hat and shake it up and then put them in any order, and it would have been fine no matter what you came out with, because 1 through 9 they were getting something 1 through 9 offensively. So yeah, just if nothing else, a deep lineup for Oklahoma. And by the way, I just totaled it up real quick. I should have done this before the show. Oklahoma outscored its opponents 32-6 in the toughest tournament that was happening in college
Right.
baseball. The toughest 3-game set that group had. They came
Yeah.
out 32-6 in those 3 games.
I mean, that's pure dominance. And
Yeah.
and it's not that we didn't expect Oklahoma to be good, but I mean, this was just a level higher than anyone could have expected. Maybe outside of Norman, anyone
Yeah.
expected.
A couple of shout outs on the offensive side for Oklahoma. Brendan Brock showed the
Mhm.
physicality with the home run he hit. I believe that was in Friday's game that he had a grand slam that was, showed off the physicality there. Trey Gamble also was on base all weekend, on base percentage of 769, 6 walks, not a single strikeout for Trey Gamble over the
Hmm.
weekend.
That'll play.
Yeah, exactly. That's his thing, is getting on base. But man, 6 walks to no strikeouts against the quality of pitching that he faced over the weekend is really impressive stuff. And so, look, when you have a weekend where Jason Walk hit under 200, Nolan Stevens hit 143, and we're coming out of it still thinking like,
Yeah.
that was a
It's a
great
scary
offensive
lineup.
performance. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because those guys are going to come around. It's just one weekend, so yeah, just really, really impressive stuff from the Sooners all around. Have to feel nothing but a ton of optimism about about them moving forward. Now they have moving forward, they do have a weekend series this weekend against Coppin State. Obviously, we expect them to handle that even more easily than what they did last weekend, but it will be an opportunity for them to maybe experiment a little bit. You
Mm-hmm.
know, with the nature of the tough games opening weekend, I feel like sometimes you don't see as much experimenting because there's a heightened intensity that kind of suggests like, hey, these are important games. We need to win. Whereas an opportunity against Coppin State might be one where we see some different lineup combinations. We see maybe fewer pitches thrown by the starting pitchers next weekend just to get some different bullpen arms in. We'll see, but it'll be a very different vibe this coming weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the other thing is they do have another game in Arlington before they go home. They're going to play New Mexico State on
Right.
Monday, and
Right.
and and New Mexico State got swept by Baylor. But be careful after that high of high. I mean, baseball's a funny game, man. You got to bring it every time, and this is not the time for a letdown right before you go home.
Right, and it's interesting schedule for them too because they have they've got after the Coppin State series they have two midweek home games against Arizona State, which is
Yeah.
kind of an interesting little wrinkle. So some tough games still ahead for Oklahoma before they get into SEC play. Let's move on to talk about the Razorbacks. Mark, the
Yeah.
2-1 this weekend. The one loss was to TCU, and it
Classic
was
game too.
it was a great game. Yeah, and close. And kudos to Arkansas in that game for fighting back because when TCU got to 100 eats early in
Hmm.
that game, I kind of thought, oh boy, this might get away from them a little bit. But it didn't. They fought back and they just came up a little bit short ultimately. So for me, nothing that really happened this weekend puts me either a nothing really changed in a way that makes me think, oh boy, Arkansas is actually, maybe the best team in the country, but also nothing really happened that made me come off of thinking that, oh, this is still a top 10, maybe close to top 5 type of team. They just kind of held serve, if you will, to
Yeah.
use a tennis metaphor. So I think a good weekend for the Razorbacks as well.
Yeah. A couple call outs. I mean, Tate McGuire. I mean, he was perfect. 5 innings relief. I don't think I think he actually was perfect. I don't
It
think
was
he allowed
15
a
up,
run.
15 down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Really kept them in the game. And that was obviously bodes well for whatever role he's going to play going forward. Damian Ruiz keeps getting on base. He's been on base, 11 straight times now without an error. They're all, walks, hit batsman or hits. Um, and then the other thing is they took a punch from Texas Tech. Texas Tech was down and came roaring back, and it would have been really easy. And we see that a lot of times. You give up that big lead and you really deflate. But credit Arkansas for fighting back and showing a lot of character to get that win and escape. Because 2-1 coming out of the Globe Block 2-1 feels a whole lot better than 1-2, especially if you with the TCU game that was really close and it came back and made it interesting. But if you would have dropped the Texas Tech game, you would have felt a whole lot different going into. They also have a game today against Tarleton that they're playing in Globe Life, but still, they come home 3-1. That seems. That, I mean, I think that's probably where that's an acceptable outcome.
I think certainly since it felt like the offense didn't quite get going. You mentioned
Mhm.
Damian Ruiz, and that's absolutely the right call out. Ryder Helfrich had those 2 bombs in the
Yeah.
Friday game, but there's some guys that just didn't have great weekends offensively. So when you consider that Hunter Dietz had a tough start, like I think 2-1 is
Mhm.
a perfectly acceptable outcome there. A shout out to you mentioned Tate McGuire, Colin Fisher also with a really good start in the finale there for Arkansas. 5 innings pitch, only gave up 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts for him in that outing. And it just goes to show what Dave Van Horn was telling us all off season that, hey, we've got some guys here that, have taken some serious steps forward. And 2 names that kept coming up were Tate McGuire and Colin Fisher. And,
Mhm.
and there you go. Like arguably the two most important pitching performances of the weekend were those 2 guys. It wasn't 100% because one of the other names we heard a lot about was Cooper Dossett, and he did not have a good outing.
Right.
So not batting 1,000 on that, but certainly showed the quality of his arm talent and is going to get more opportunities because he came in throwing up to 98 miles an hour, so he'll get more
Mhm.
chances. But um,
He just needs to pitch.
yeah, it's the same thing with Hunter Dietz, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to get asked on radio this week by someone Oh, is there any worry about Hunter Dietz? And I think I just come back to like, well, the dude hasn't pitched in 3 years,
Right,
essentially.
right.
Like, we're gonna have to give him some, like, things will have to go catastrophically bad over the next few weeks, I think, for Arkansas to second guess him in the rotation. I think he's going to get a lot of rope and be given
Mhm.
all kinds of opportunity to prove that he's ready for it, because it's just going to take time. He hasn't been stretched out in his entire Arkansas career, and that's what they're working on now.
100%.
Yeah. Vanderbilt 1-2 on the weekend.
Yeah,
Mark, if I told you that Vanderbilt was going to hit 9 home runs in 3 games, what would you have assumed the record would be? Because I don't
yeah,
think I would have said 1-2.
yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I think, I'm not terribly disappointed with how Vanderbilt played. My concern for them was, are they more physical? Because that has been you know, the label, right? Just not enough thump, and they showed it. I think they're going to pitch, they're going to play defense, they're going to do all those things like they typically do. And if they hit for more power, I think they're going to be fine. The TCU game, it could have gone either way. I mean, you had the miss third strike throw down the first base that really hurt them, that would have ended the inning. Instead, gave TCU what, a couple runs on that play. I mean, it was just, and then you lose by a run. So it's, those kinds of things is just baseball. It happens, and unfortunately, Vanderbilt was on the wrong end of that single play, and it does tilt how we view the weekend. That one shift from a 2-1 to a 1-2. But I do think that, I'm sure Vandy's disappointed, especially with the way Sunday happened, where you get run ruled. But I just think that they could have stayed home and beat up on, pick your team, and that an SEC team demolished this weekend, but they didn't. They went out and challenged themselves, and if you do that, you're going to lose some games.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. I'm with you. I came out of the weekend thinking I was feeling maybe, if anything, better about Vanderbilt, because they did show some increased
Hmm.
physicality this weekend. And they still got, for the most part, the quality pitching we kind of expected. They had a couple guys with tough outings, but the starters were by and large good. Even in the Sunday game, when they got run ruled, most of the damage came after Nate Taylor was out of the game.
Right.
And so, like, even he threw the ball pretty well. So that the pitching was still pretty solid. They only hit 232 as a team, but honestly, like, that's the least worrying thing for me, just because I don't think we necessarily had any concerns about, will this team hit for some average. Like, I thought, yeah, sure, they're going to
Yeah.
hit for some average. So the fact that they hit 9 home runs but only hit 232, like, I I'll put it this way: I don't have any concerns that Vanderbilt is going to be overly reliant on the home run this year. Like, I
Right.
just don't, I think they'll be more physical, but I don't think they're going to turn into one of those teams where it's just like, well, if they're not hitting the ball out of the ballpark, they're not going to win games. I'm
Mhm.
not worried about that at all. So, yeah, I'm with you. I feel pretty positive coming out of the weekend with Vanderbilt, with the way they played. And yeah, you're going to lose games when you play difficult competition, and that's just what we saw, is they just played difficult competition.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Let's get to your travels, Mark. We'll take them in the order of which you had them.
Yeah.
So first, you saw Mississippi State take on Hofstra, a series that by and large was, I think, more competitive certainly than I imagined,
Was.
and I think
Yeah.
more than anybody imagined. And maybe it just turns out that Hofstra, because I think you and I are both in the same boat of, like, we're not going to pretend to know how good Hofstra is or isn't really. But maybe it turns out that Hofstra is better than we think. But either way, it was still kind of surprising to see it as close as it was. And the game you attended on Friday, on opening day, was the closest of the bunch. So just tell me a little bit about your trip
Well,
to Mississippi State and what your takeaways were.
well, first off, they had nearly 13,000 people
I
there.
mean, that's
And it's
pretty
not
good
even
showing.
it's not even Valentine's Day yet, and I mean, you're drawing that kind of crowd. Tons of
I,
excitement,
I
right?
should say, I apologize for cutting you off, but there were a couple things this weekend. We were talking about Globe Life. Did you see that they had 22,000 in that ballpark on Saturday? Like,
On
so
Valentine's
anyway,
night, that's
yeah,
where you took
exactly.
your honey, right?
That's right. It was a big romantic scene at Globe Life
Yeah, of
Field.
course.
But
Everybody
anyway,
loves diamonds, right?
yeah,
So, and
heyo.
I yeah, yeah, I do think that, Mississippi State, they're gonna be fine. They did not play well the day I was there, and I do think that's part of, it's a new coach. a lot of new players, a lot of just energy and excitement around the program, probably feeling a little bit of pressure, wound a little tight, and that doesn't surprise me. I do think that that will stabilize. They got the right guy to help navigate it, and I, I think the interesting part for me, I mean, Ryan McPherson, he was 98 with his fastball, and he has the stuff of an SEC ace. He's just got to pitch it. He's got to do it week after week, and I think that offensively they just have so many options, and we talked about that all preseason. I don't think we really solved anything in 3 games. There's just tons of options, and they got to figure out the right fit and what it needs to look like by SEC play. And really, in a couple of weeks, they're going to play out in Arlington, and see Virginia Tech, Arizona State, and UCLA. So I think that'll be a nice test because certainly, playing Hofstra, they were very scrappy, but the talent level wasn't what they're going to see going forward. So I I wonder if a team like Mississippi State that's so talented actually plays better against guys, pumping in 96 as opposed to 91 in that kind of thing. So I think the last call out for Mississippi State is there is just so much positive energy around that program, and the expectations are sky high. So I think the interesting piece is going to be what happens when they go through a slump, right? Everybody does. LSU won the title last year, went to Auburn and got swept. Everybody's going to get hit in the mouth. So it's just handling, because you're expecting to go undefeated and run rule everybody, and that's just not realistic, right? So you've got to be. It's baseball. You're gonna get hit. So I do think uh, handling those highs and lows are going to be one of the storylines that everybody watches for Mississippi State because they're just so excited because they really do have a great team, and you're trying to win the College World Series in February, and you can't quite do that yet. So I think that'll be a fun thing for all of us and for state fans as well to just kind of watch and see how your neighbor handles this and how the guy that shows up at your tailgate or out in the outfield, how they navigate all of these different um, journey, the parts of the journey towards the final goal.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. They've got a Tuesday game at home against Troy this week, and I know
Okay.
Troy's coming off a weekend that it probably wants to forget against Mercer, but obviously that's a talented team, and it's a team that knows they have to take advantage of these games against SEC clubs to
Sure.
build a postseason resume. So State's going to have to play better than it did against Hofstra to beat Troy, and so I think that'll be there are still stiffer tests to come, but
Mhm.
I do think that is like a nice step up, especially on a Tuesday where you're not going to have your weekend guys out there on the mound. It is
Yeah.
a little bit of a nice step up to see what they're made of. That okay, you kind of skated by a little bit, like you're going to have to play better to beat Troy, and so I think I kind of like that as a nice little Tuesday test for them.
Yeah, I agree. And they go to Southern Miss in a few weeks. Southern Miss had a great series with Santa Barbara over the weekend. Great on campus and quite. Let's get more of these great on campus matchups
Hmm.
early in the year. That
Hmm.
was phenomenal. But that'll be a nice test for Mississippi State. And also with these midweeks, I think you're going to see some of that depth come into play as they experiment with different roles.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So then Saturday went to Alabama. They played a doubleheader. They were playing Washington State, and Washington State clipped them on Friday. They uh, just talking to the people there. Tyler Fay started, didn't pitch badly, had some kind of weak contact hits, and then gave up a bomb. And and then offensively, they stranded 11 runners, just couldn't get the big hit. Well, that all changed on Saturday. Zane Adams got the ball and you wondered if Alabama would be a little bit shaky to start with after getting upset on Friday, and he pretty much decided right away that no one was going to score on him. He was dominant, and this is his 3rd year in the program. This is the best I've ever seen him pitch. He's certainly just commanded, just confident. Uh, Granted, he'll face better bats than what Washington State has later on, but it was really good. I mean, he was up, he was sitting 94, 95. It's just an excellent change. I mean, he looked like an SEC ace out there. And then in the second game, freshman Miles Upchurch was very similar, really pumped up for his first college start. I think his first threw his first pitch 96, and talking to Rob Vaughn after the game, he was a little bit worried that Upchurch would be too jacked up, right? And just
Yeah,
come
yeah,
out and try to throw it 112 on his first pitch or something. And but he didn't. He handled the moment, and he struck out 9 in 4 innings, and only a couple of walks, and really didn't get hit. He looked good, and he's only going to get better as he gains experience. And then offensively, Alabama's fighting some injuries, especially in the outfield. So you're moving some guys around, trying to get your best 9 on the field. And so I think that's a work in progress. They hit pretty well the day I was there. They hit throughout the lineup. Got some freshmen they really like. Andrew Purdy is a guy to watch. I wrote about that in the Dish on Sunday, I guess. And he's just one of these guys that understands how to hit. He's freshman, and he's going to have a bigger role as the year goes on. And the other guy I got to mention, Justin LeBron, man. As a freshman, he came in really lean, wiry, and the ball still jumped off his bat. And then you look at what he has turned his body into. He looks like a free safety or something out there now. I
mm,
mean, he is put together. And the ball, he hit 2 home runs this weekend. I mean, and they were not cheapies. I mean, he where before you wondered, how is this guy generating all this power? Nobody's going to ever say that again. I mean, he looks like a guy who's going to punish the baseball, and he did this weekend.
yeah. Good weekend too for Bryce Fowler, a guy that they're going to
Yeah,
need. Hit 500, took 5 walks, on base percentage of
and
almost
got hurt.
700,
Yeah, he
and then
left the
right.
game, and it was a funny story here. He left the game. He slid in. Um, I forget. I think it was a wrist or something, trying to beat out a double, and had to leave. So then they played the second game, and Bond says he just walked over to me between games, and he's all bandaged up. And so Rob's like, "Oh, this guy looks hurt." He goes, "I'm good to go." And he's like, "Wait a second, this is the first game. Don't you want to kind of take it easy?" And he goes, "No, I'm playing." So he's like, "All right, if you're good to go," and he did. And he went out and obviously had he continued his hot streak. So veteran player, and that's the kind of grinder and leader, older player that can really help, because Alabama's got some young guys and they got some new players, and having a guy like that in a prominent role. He's batting lead off, playing center field. Yeah, I mean that's what you need, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no rule that says you can't just hold the bat with one hand. So I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't need both.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us a little about Ole Miss, Mark.
So saw the Rebels yesterday. They played in Nevada and handled them. The question I had, well, a couple questions I had on them heading in. How would the pitching be after Hunter Elliott? We don't have any questions about Hunter, but after that, there's the guys who haven't done it, at least not at this level. Um, Cade Townsend was really good Saturday. I didn't see him, but he filled up the zone. They said he was just 4 pitches, and I think it was like 48 strikes out of 54 pitches or something crazy
Yeah,
like that.
just
Just
insane.
nuts.
Hard to
No,
imagine. Like,
yeah,
and it's to the point where I'm sure he knows this. Like but like it's where you feel like you need to take him aside and be like, look, when we get to
yeah,
SEC play, you cannot throw that
right.
many strikes.
Uh,
That's
not
going to be a
unless
problem.
Not unless you're Paul Skeens. You
Right.
cannot pitch in the
Exactly.
zone that much, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I do think that Will Libbert was really good on the day I was there. Lefty. He was 95, 96, right, and just a really biting slider. Uh, they taught him a cutter that he's mixing in, so he was throwing 4 pitches and in the zone. Really good pickoff move. It might be a balk, but it was really effective. And beware if you get to first base, because it's dangerous. Offensively, there's still some swing and miss, although they were really patient, against Nevada. Sunday and drew a lot of walks, and Nevada was kind of spraying a little bit. But I do think that's the concern offensively is it just too much swing and miss? Or are they going to have to hit home runs to score? But they didn't have to Sunday. They took advantage. They took their walks. They took doubles, and flares, and they were able to just do what they needed to do to keep the merry-go-round going, and that was successful. I do think they're going to hit. The only concern I had, and I wrote this in, I guess it's Monday's dish now. I don't know how athletic or how speedy or rangy they're going to be defensively. I think they definitely have some hit over field guys, and in that ballpark, it makes sense because I think that's the right play. But as you go around the league and maybe some bigger outfields, things like that, maybe they have to make some adjustments. That and shortstop, Braden Randall had 2 errors on Friday. Owen Pino played Sunday. He made an error. And if you're not hitting and you're making some errors, that's kind of a position that they need to shore up a little bit. You've got to improve, ideally both, but at least one of those areas. So that would be the other thing. But I was pleased with them. I mean, certainly they're going to pitch. I think they're going to pitch fine. They've got some depth. And in that lineup, the older guys, I mean, they've been through it. I think it's going to be a similar lineup to last year's, and with maybe a little more hit for contact.
Yeah,
compared to last year it was a little more power oriented.
Yeah, big weekend for Tristan Becerra, which has kind of been a long time coming for, he was at Clemson, and I saw Clemson on a few occasions over the last couple of years, and you watch his BP and you're like, why is this guy not the best hitter in this lineup?
Some juice.
And, so I'm not saying he's going to be the best hitter in this Ole Miss lineup, but given what he did this weekend, you see the potential of what he can do. So a sight for sore eyes, certainly for Ole Miss, that he had the weekend he did.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kentucky, Mark. I saw them on Friday. They blew out UNC Greensboro. They basically blew out UNC Greensboro 3 times. The third game was technically close. It was 10-6, but I don't think I wasn't there, but it looked to me as I was keeping up with it, it wasn't as close as 10-6 would lead you to believe. Just a really clean weekend for Kentucky, save for, of course, and I'll get this out of the way off the top, the Tyler Bell injury. If you weren't really paying attention over the weekend or was kind of checked out or just was only paying attention to your team, Tyler Bell dove for a ball up the middle in Friday's game, stayed down, was favoring his shoulder. He was doing that thing that you do when he got, finally the trainer came out, the coaching staff, or Nick Mingione came out, training staff came out. When they helped him up, first of all, they only picked him up by the one hand. So like that told you something. It was his glove shoulder that was hurt. And as he was walking off, he was doing that thing, when somebody's shoulder's hurt where they were holding their arm up, kind of favoring it. So at that moment, you kind of knew, this is not just I jammed my shoulder and I got to shake it off, that kind of thing.
Right.
And the word is out indefinitely. That's indefinitely is not really a word you ever really want to hear with an injury, because it suggests that probably at least medium to long term. And the college baseball season is pretty short when you get right down to it, so not a lot of time for recovery there. So we await more specific prognosis there, but I think we do have to interface with the idea that we might not see Tyler Bell again this season. And as a draft eligible sophomore, that means, his college career might be done. I certainly hope that's not the case. I certainly hope we see him back at some point. It's not as serious as maybe people are fearing, but we do need to probably deal with reality on reality's terms and acknowledge that could be ultimately the case. But other than that, it was a fantastic weekend for Kentucky. And I think their lineup has an opportunity to deal with his absence pretty well. It was again, like, consider the competition, but they got a little something from everybody. They stole a whole bunch of bases. They stole 23 bags over the weekend, 19 of them in a doubleheader on Saturday. And it wasn't just, yes, Jace Tarnish stole 5 and he's a speedster, but they got it from everybody. I mean, they had catchers stealing bases. Ethan Hindle stole 5 bases. Like it was everybody getting in on it.
Hmm.
So it looks like that, that Kentucky style is still very much in play this season with a lineup that doesn't have to score that way. I don't think,
Mhm.
but still can and still will, as we saw over the weekend. But the biggest, I think, positive was Jackson Jelkin on Friday.
Yeah.
It was just unhittable, absolutely unhittable. It was a power sinker at 96. It was a cutter at 91, 92, and then this just giant sweeping slider that nobody had a chance against. I mean, that pitch was taking hard left turns as it approached the plate, and nobody really had a shot at it. And if that's the type of arm that he is moving forward for Kentucky, the thing we
Look
talked
out.
about all off season, right? The thing we talked about all off season about, hey, in terms of arm talent, this guy's as good as Kentucky's had since maybe Zach Thompson. Like if he is right and if he is pitching well, he's going to be able to win a bunch of Friday games for Kentucky, and it changes the entire complexion of their rotation. And so it's just one start. You don't want to get too carried away, but my
Mhm.
goodness, like the scouts that showed up to see him left incredibly happy. I have to imagine.
Yeah. And, it's not just him either. I mean, you got
Yeah.
Cleaver, who would be the ace
Yep.
for, most most staffs around the country. I mean, that's a heck of a 1-2 punch, and then there's depth behind those guys too. I mean, it's a really deep staff and gives them some options in case, a guy needs to miss a start or, whatever change that you need to make. I think the thing for Kentucky is they have been able to identify players that really thrive in that offense and just reload with them, and that's an art, man, because it's hard to get the right guys out of the portal. I mean, it's and fit, and they continue to do it, and I'm really anxious or excited to see how they do, once competition rises. Because I mean, I'm a believer. I think Kentucky's going to be really good. It's just how do they stack up with some of these other heavyweights, and if they've got Chelkin pitching the way you just described, that changes the math on them too. I mean that's an Omaha team if he's like that.
Yeah. Their starting pitchers, Jelkin, Cleaver, and Harris over the weekend. 12 innings pitched. I'm doing some math in my head. That's dangerous. 12 innings pitched, 7 hits, 1 run, no walks, 22
Whew,
strikeouts.
goodness.
So that's look, regardless of competition, that's getting it
Mhm.
done. So
Yeah, you're
we
feeling the
will,
zone. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. All right, Mark, with the rest of the results, let's kind of quick hit our way through it.
Okay.
I'm going to read off a result. You kind of give me a snap thought on it. I'll do the same as we go through it,
Mhm.
and then we'll get the folks out of here. Texas A&M beat the brakes off
Mhm.
Tennessee Tech 3 times. They scored 45 runs in 3 games, so 15 per game.
Nice.
Gave up some runs too, but I'm not going to get bent out of shape about that. I think the the way those games played out just lends itself to the other team maybe scoring some runs too. But the
Yeah.
offense showed that it's going to be scary, regardless of competition.
Yeah, I mean, and plus, to your point, it's really hard as a pitcher to sit there those long innings where they're scoring so many runs, especially if it's cold, and then go back out there and pitch well again. But yeah, I mean, a lot of power. It's a lineup that's scary. Again, I'm excited to see them against someone, who can press them a little bit. But yeah, after last year, it was really, I have to imagine, pretty cathartic to just come out and just kick ass this weekend.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what they needed, and that's what they got.
Auburn swept Youngstown State, but who boy, they had to work pretty hard for the first 2 wins
Yeah,
in that series. And if they had not gotten great starting pitching those first 2 days out of Marciano and Sanders, they might have lost that series,
yeah,
honestly. But they got great starts from those two. They got a great start from Alex Petrovich in Game 3, and to me, that's the headline for Auburn is that those 3 starting pitchers pitching as well as they did in a weekend when it turned out that they really kind of needed it.
yeah. I think for me, I mean, Auburn's lineup was the part I had the least concerns about. I
Yeah,
mean, the
same.
concerns were on the mound, and it was just the opposite. Certainly the first two days. The other thing to call out here is Chris Rembert was injured. He's probably going to be back for SEC play, but it's a high ankle sprain. Those are kind of iffy sometimes. So we'll see how that looks. But yeah, you don't want to lose, one of the best second basemen in the country. We've got him number one, and he's one of the best players in the country, and really a spark plug for that lineup. I do think that if Auburn pitches, and again, we need to see them against better competition, and you'll see them next week against really good competition.
Yeah.
I feel like we'll learn a lot, and it's an older team, it's a veteran team, but they do have questions just on the mound as trying to find out who's going to fill what role, and as that comes together, Griffin Graves didn't throw, and he will return. What's his role going to be? I do think that Auburn, based on what we saw this weekend, um, they had their clunkers and they were able to win where some teams didn't, and I think that shows a lot of character, and it shows a veteran club that's gonna be able to withstand some of those moments.
LSU swept Milwaukee. Another series where, in this case, they had to work harder than you would think, given the scores.
Hmm.
The offense in 2 of the 3 games woke up kind of partway through the game
Yeah,
and just ran away with things. But Milwaukee was pretty feisty in this series. But LSU comes away with the sweep. I think if you're gonna look at it and say why was it that Milwaukee ended up being a little more competitive, and that's that they got to Case and Evans and William Schmidt in those 2
hmm,
starts. Those 2 guys are going to have to be better moving forward, obviously. But if you're LSU, you use the phrase, clunkers. They had a couple of clunkers this weekend, and they won the games, and that's kind of what this time of year is all about.
yeah, and tons of strikeouts on the mound too. I mean, they just rolled through. I forget the number, but it was like 40 something for the weekend. I do feel like um, that offensively that lineup has a chance to be really good. I'm going to see them against Kent State tonight. Kent State, by the way, swept Southeastern Louisiana on the road, so
Yeah,
that's going to be a pretty
it's a
good
nice little
pretty good
matchup.
test. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Texas swept UC Davis. I think the big
Mhm.
the big headline here is Dylan Volantis on Sunday with an excellent start,
Yep.
passing his first test with flying colors. Something tells me that if he continues to do that, he will not be pitching on Sundays the rest of the season.
Yeah, I was surprised he's on Sunday, but in hindsight, I kind of like it, easing him into it, taking some of the pressure off, giving a veteran guy like Ruger Riojas the nod to start with, and then, but yeah, but Volantis was apparently I haven't seen any of this yet, but apparently just was really filthy. If he can continue to do that, yeah, then yeah, he's going to win a ton of games, regardless of what day he pitches.
Georgia took 2 or 3 against Wright State. They lose the finale of that series. It's Wright State, so you're kind of like,
Mhm.
like we
Yeah,
know they're going to be a good team, so you're not too worried about that. To me, the headline here for Georgia is that the new arms that they're going to be leaning heavily on, for the most part, looked pretty good and
yeah,
passed their first test. So you just kind of check that box and move on, that those guys looked the part in their first outings for the Bulldogs.
yeah. Kenny Ishikawa, man, he's going to be a star. He's very demonstrative and animated and talented and getting production. And you put all that together, right? He's a showman and he's producing. Man, the TV's going to love him. He's a budding star. And keep in mind, this is a guy starting center fielder, threw a guy out the plate, uh, a key hitter in the lineup, and also a weekend arm starter. I mean, it's it's one all in one guy, and certainly I can't wait to see him in person. And he's going to be one of the best hitters that we see. I mean, best overall players that we see.
Right. Tennessee swept Nichols. Consider the competition here, but we went into the season talking about which of these guys is a potential Friday starter, and all 3 of them pitched like Friday guys. They
Hmm.
basically did what you would want to see them do against a team like Nichols. So I feel more optimistic about them than I did going in, understanding, of course, that the competition is what it is. So this we kind of continue on, like the learning process of figuring out which of these guys is going to be the one, and maybe it is multiple guys, but trying to
Right.
figure out which one of these guys is going to be the guy that spearheads this rotation.
Yeah, I mean, that was interesting. Certainly they all 3 pitched well, and then guys behind them pitched well too. And then Blaine Brown. the Rice transfer,
Yeah.
two-way player, but stepped in and immediately he looked. I mean, talk about a guy who could be a star. I mean, he certainly has that look. And Henry Ford. I didn't look at. Uh, I don't know if he stayed there, but he was batting leadoff. Get that
Mm.
guy as many at bats as you can, I guess, man. He's. I mean, you kind of expect him. He's going to have a monster year too. So, again, a really good lineup. Like to see him against somebody better, and that's coming. But man, opening weekend they impressed.
Florida took 2 of 3 from UAB. I don't think there's any getting around the fact that the Friday loss was kind of ugly.
Yeah,
It just that is what it is. Liam Peterson was not particularly sharp. He will obviously have better starts ahead of him. And I said this on Weekend Waypoints, and I'll allow you to speak for yourself on this one. I just kind of think Liam Peterson's the type of pitcher where we know enough about him now to know that he's probably going to have a couple of those throughout the
yeah.
season. But they win the series because, in part because the two guys behind him, King and Walls, were both really, really good. So they get the series win, which is obviously, considering where they started the weekend, you'll take that.
Yeah, I do. I do like the talent on that team, and offensively, they really had their moments, man. They put up some numbers. I think did they have a 10-run inning? I mean, it was something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was. I think they're going to hit. And Peterson, yeah, you don't know what you're going to get, sometimes, but the stuff is in there, and I think you just keep running him out there and hope that he's got a lot of experience. This is his third year as a weekend starter that it just sort of clicks and it's not just so much highs and lows, it's more consistency. And that's really the key. But like Aiden King is super consistent, man. I mean, he's coming out and putting up zeros. Certainly a couple more weeks and you're looking at that. If if King continues to pitch that way, it's going to be really hard to keep him out of that Friday spot.
Yeah, no doubt. South Carolina took 2 of 3 against Northern Kentucky. Got to be honest, not the most inspiring weekend there. They had to work pretty hard for the couple of wins. They take a loss in the finale, and I don't know about you, Mark, but you saw the deal in post game where Paul Maneri kind of said he didn't have him ready to play, and that the maybe the 18 innings, the 18 innings, there was a little bit of fatigue there from the doubleheader the day before. I think he's probably getting more of a hard time than he deserves on that because I know what he's saying. Like, I
Right.
don't think he's literally saying the guys can't stand for 18 innings. I think it was just a classic case of a head coach protecting his team and saying, look, it's
Yeah.
on me. And it just came out in a way that made it sound like something he didn't necessarily mean. That's where I kind of land on that. But I have to admit, when I first heard it, I did roll my eyes a little bit like, really,
Mhm.
that was the problem here.
Yeah.
But now that I've had some time with it, I think I know what he was trying to say. And I think it just came out in a clunky way, but still not the most inspiring weekend for South Carolina.
Yeah, I think, even one of the games they won, it was a walk-off homer. I mean, it
Right.
was.
Hey, Obi. Yep.
Yeah, they were really close to losing that series. So, not the way that, after last year that they wanted to come out. They needed something like what A&M did. And just come out and have that weekend to feel good about, and it just didn't happen. So, again, it's one weekend. You can flush it and move on. And they did win the series, and at least that's something they can build off of.
For those who aren't watching on video, you missed an impressive move there. Mark just waved off housekeeping at his hotel silently and quickly. I
Not the
saw the
first time.
little arm movement there, kind of giving them. So shout out to Mark for doing that in silence and doing it seamlessly. I heard the knock. I wondered if that was your
Yeah,
room or if it was next door.
yeah.
Um, last team, Missouri took 2 of 3 against Mount St. Mary's. It was a weekend that started with a tough loss and ended with the most runs scored in a Missouri game since 1902. So a wild swing of emotions for Missouri opening weekend. They were without Cam Durnan and Caden Peer, uh,
Mhm.
but still, you shouldn't have lost a game to Mount St. Mary's. I think that kind of goes without saying, but they are going to be a better team with those two guys there. So good for them for bouncing back and not letting that hang over them and winning the series. But obviously, not the way you want to start the season with that
Yeah.
loss.
I mean, they blew a lead on Friday. They had a closer than expected win on Saturday. So just come out on Sunday and just all of the negativity, you just got to have some fun, man. You just got to get all of that out. And then hopefully they can build on that. They've got a really, really tough game at Florida Atlantic. on Tuesday. So hopefully there's some momentum that can carry forward with that. But I do have to ask you, 1902 was the last time they scored that many runs. I remember covering that game. I had to take a I drove my horse to the telegraph office to send in the story, and but I do think that Missouri, if they can have some, they just need some positive momentum, and the schedule does set up. There's opportunities to win some games and have some good things happen, and they've just got to produce.
I feel like 1902 is like when people talk like this. The Missouri Tigers scored 35 runs. Like it's one of those old timey things.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah,
with your
so
sarsaparilla.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. When people were giving narcotics as remedies,
Oh yeah,
back in those days.
when
Um,
Coca-Cola was actually Coke.
that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, but you're right. I mean, it felt like they needed Sunday's game to
Hmm.
just kind of shake the weekend off, and we'll see if that has any carryover. It's going to have to, obviously, especially while Durnan and Pierre are out. Have not heard specific updates on them, but the thing I heard initially on them was a couple weeks. We'll see if that holds. They're obviously a much better team with those two guys in the lineup. All right, Mark, that's it. That's an episode. We've recapped week one. We got back in the swing of things. We're going to be a little sore tomorrow, right,
Hmm.
Mark? Because we're getting back in the swing of things. We're
Yeah.
flexing some muscles we haven't flexed in a while. So we're getting back into the swing of it. But good to be back. Good to be talking about some actual games, some actual results, and instead of just the as Chris Burke, our buddy Chris Burke calls it, the fake season. We're
Yeah.
done talking about the fake
It's
season,
over. Yeah.
and we're talking about the real stuff now. So a heck of a lot of fun to do that with you here. And that is going to do it for this edition of Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. Want to thank our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors for sponsoring this and every episode of Highway to Hoover now for more than a year. Really happy with our partnership with those guys. Happy to have them on board. Want to thank Mark, as always, for joining me, and want to thank you, the listeners, for listening.